The air in the Grand Colosseum of Kathvar Prime buzzed with a sound that could only be described as a symphony of anticipation. Not the excited hum of a crowd eager for a show, but a deep, resonant thrum of thousands of alien species, each with their own unique way of expressing their bloodlust. Lord Vashkol, a being of refined tastes and a connoisseur of calculated violence, leaned back in his climate-controlled pod, a smirk playing on his lips. He'd seen empires rise and fall, witnessed countless gladiatorial bouts, but this one, this peculiar spectacle, promised a new flavor of entertainment. A human. In their arena. Against one of their champions. The sheer audacity of it was almost comical. His old military comrade, Commander Xylos, adjusted the intricate plates of his ceremonial armor, his 4 eyes gleaming with a predatory delight. Xylos was a creature of war, built for it, designed for it. He lived for the clash of steel, the spray of alien fluids. Vashkol, my friend, Xylos rumbled, a clicking sound escaping his mandibles that passed for laughter. This should be truly entertaining. A human in the blood arena against one of our champions. I almost feel bad taking their money. His words were laced with a condescending amusement, a common sentiment among the upper echelons of the Third Dominion when discussing the newly encountered human species. They were, in the grand scheme of the galaxy, a relatively new addition to the intergalactic stage, and their perceived fragility was a constant source of amusement for the more established, physically imposing races. Lady Quinera, a shimmering spectacle of crystalline exoskeleton, her form shifting with vibrant hues, was already deep in her bedding. Her species communicated through a mesmerizing dance of color changes in their shells, and at that moment, she was a kaleidoscope of pure, unadulterated amusement. 500 credits on the human lasting less than 30 seconds, she announced, her shell flashing a brilliant emerald, indicating generosity, or perhaps, utter certainty. I'm feeling generous today. It was a common joke, a light-hearted wager, among the elite. No one truly expected the human to last. They were known for their cunning, their strange adaptability, but physically? Against a champion of the arena? It was unthinkable. Merchant Zultup, a being who looked like a bizarre fusion of a slug and a meticulously tailored business suit, waved his numerous tentacles with an almost frantic energy. His species was renowned for their keen business sense and their uncanny ability to sniff out a profitable venture. The betting pools are absolutely insane. Zultup gurgled, his voice a series of wet, bubbling sounds. 20,000 spectators and maybe 12 people bet on the human. The odds are 500 to 1 against her. He seemed positively gleeful at the imbalance, clearly anticipating a massive payout for the house. The arena was a place of business, after all, and the suffering of a creature deemed insignificant was simply part of the profit margin. Lord Vashkol settled deeper into his plush, anatomically correct seat, taking a slow, appreciative sip of his imported fermented algae extract. The aroma was subtly intoxicating, a perfect complement to the unfolding drama. The arena was packed to the point of overflowing. Representatives from countless species, each with their own unique physiologies and customs, filled the gleaming seats. The insectoid Klaxeri, with their multifaceted eyes and chittering vocalizations, vibrated with excitement in their designated sections. The gaseous Netheri floated serenely in their containment spheres, their forms subtly shifting, a silent testament to their anticipation. Even the uptight consortium delegates, usually too prim and proper for such barbaric displays, had made an appearance, though they maintained a facade of disdain, as if the entire event was beneath their refined sensibilities. Suddenly, the announcement system crackled to life, a booming, resonant voice filling the colossal space. Ladies, gentlemen, and esteemed beings of all classifications, the voice reverberated, causing a ripple of murmurs to sweep through the crowd. It was the voice of the grand announcer, a creature known for his theatrical flair and his ability to whip the crowd into a frenzy. Prepare yourselves for a contest of unmatched skill, unparalleled might, and unimaginable courage. The pronouncements were always exaggerated, designed to heighten the drama and milk every last ounce of excitement from the expectant audience. Meanwhile, far from the opulent boxes and the roaring crowds, in a dense, primeval forest on a newly discovered human colony world, a different kind of drama was unfolding. A hunting pack moved with silent efficiency through the thick vegetation. Their advanced stealth generators, a marvel of alien technology, rendered them utterly invisible to the primitive human sensors. They were like ghosts in the emerald twilight, their movements precise, their intent singular. Through the tangled undergrowth, they could clearly see their target, a lone human female. She was kneeling beside a cluster of exposed rocks, meticulously making notes on a small, rectangular handheld device. Her short, dark hair was pulled back from her face, and she wore simple, unassuming clothing that, to the aliens, offered zero protection. It was almost laughable. The leader of the pack, Czar, consulted his intelligence briefing, the information scrolling across his internal display. Maya Torres, he read aloud, his voice a low, guttural murmur. Engineer. Age 28. Specializes in planetary resource extraction. He paused, his multi-jointed fingers tapping rhythmically on his forearm. No military training. No combat experience. No augmentations or genetic modifications. A collective scoff rippled through his pack. Such a creature was hardly a challenge, barely even a sport. Then, Czar's internal display highlighted a specific line of text, and he tilted his head, a hint of something akin to curiosity, or perhaps mild amusement, sparking in his multifaceted eyes. Wait, he said, it says here she once participated in something called mixed martial arts for recreation. How adorable. The word adorable was spoken with a contemptuous sneer, a clear indication of how little threat they perceived from this fragile human. The human, Maya Torres, was utterly oblivious to their hidden presence. She continued her work, absorbed in the geological survey, her brow furrowed in concentration. She looked so small, so utterly defenseless against the formidable hunters. Czar, despite his species' inherent ruthlessness, almost felt a twinge of something akin to guilt. Almost. He quickly suppressed it. Orders were orders. This specimen was required for the arena trials. Students, Czar commanded his pack, his voice dropping to a low, authoritative growl. Minimal force. The council wants this specimen alive and relatively undamaged for the arena trials. Try not to break too many of its bones. The capture, as expected, took exactly 4 seconds. Maya Torres, caught completely off guard, barely had time to register a shadow before a wave of debilitating energy washed over her, and the world went black. The hunt was over, and the true spectacle was about to begin. The aliens had their prize, and they believed they had captured nothing more than a fragile, easily broken specimen. They had no idea the adorable human was about to unleash a storm they could never have imagined. Back in the Grand Colosseum, the roar of the crowd intensified, a deafening wave of sound that vibrated through Lord Vashkol's very bones. The massive holographic displays flickered to life, showcasing the reigning champion of the Kathvar Prime arena, Xylos, the Unbreakable. Xylos was a truly formidable sight, a mountain of hardened muscle and segmented chitin, standing over 15 feet tall. His skin, a mottled obsidian, shimmered under the arena lights, reflecting the myriad hues of the surrounding spectators. Each of his 6 limbs was a weapon, tipped with razor-sharp talons that could cleave through durasteel with terrifying ease. His head was a grotesque masterpiece of predatory evolution, dominated by a massive, bone-crushing maw filled with row upon row of serrated teeth, and 2 glowing, crimson eyes that burned with an ancient, primal hunger. He had a reputation that preceded him, a legend built on the broken bodies of countless opponents from across the known galaxy. No one had ever truly challenged him. No one had ever even come close. The crowd erupted in a thunderous ovation, a collective cheer that shook the very foundations of the arena. Chants of Xylos. Xylos. Unbreakable, echoed through the vast space, punctuated by the rhythmic pounding of fists, or tentacles, or whatever appendages various species used for emphatic expression. Xylos basked in the adoration, a low, rumbling growl emanating from his chest, a sound that conveyed both immense power and a chilling sense of anticipation. He struck a pose, flexing his immense bicep-like limbs, causing the very air around him to crackle with static electricity. He was the embodiment of raw, untamed power, a living testament to the might of the dominant species. Commander Xylos leaned over, his clicking laughter even more pronounced now. "Ah, Xylos," he purred, "a true specimen. He tore through that Grossian behemoth last cycle in under a minute. The betting pools for this match are truly a farce. No one with any sense would bet against him." Xylos' eyes, fixed on the holographic image of Xylos, glowed with a mixture of pride and cruel amusement. He had personally overseen Xylos' training, pushing the champion to the absolute limits of his already formidable capabilities. Lady Kinara's shell shifted to a deep, resonant violet, a color her species used to express profound agreement. "Indeed, Xylos. The human will be nothing more than a fleeting distraction. A novelty, perhaps, but certainly not a challenge." Her crystalline exoskeleton seemed to shimmer with a heightened intensity, reflecting the arena lights in dazzling patterns. She was already calculating her next wager, confident in the outcome, barely giving a second thought to the fate of the human. Xultup, ever the opportunist, rubbed his tentacles together gleefully. "A distraction that will make us all very, very rich, my friends," he squeaked, his voice a happy gurgle. "The odds on Xylos winning are practically non-existent. It's free money." His body rippled with excitement, the slug-like folds of his flesh undulating in a grotesque dance of avarice. The concept of fair odds was an alien one to him, profit was the only true measure of success. Lord Vashkol, however, found himself feeling a flicker of something he rarely experienced, intrigue. He had seen countless fighters, champions of 100 worlds, fall before Xylos. The alien's strength was legendary, his reflexes unparalleled, his savagery unmatched. Yet, there was something about the human's complete lack of physical presence, her apparent fragility, that sparked a tiny, almost imperceptible question mark in his mind. He had studied the human species, read the reports on their baffling resilience, their strange ingenuity. They were a perplexing enigma, capable of remarkable feats despite their apparent limitations. But against Xylos? It defied all logic. The grand announcer's voice boomed again, cutting through the lingering applause. "And now, for the main event. The moment you've all been waiting for. Prepare yourselves, for the champion will soon face a new challenger." The dramatic pause hung in the air, thick with anticipation. The crowd held its breath, a collective silence falling over the Colosseum, waiting for the reveal of Xylos' next victim. Then, a new holographic display flickered into existence, displaying the image of the human. Maya Torres. She looked utterly ordinary, almost dismissible. The crowd, which had been so raucous for Xylos, now emitted a low, collective murmur, a mixture of confusion and disappointment. Some species chittered in derision, others shifted restlessly in their seats, clearly expecting a more imposing challenger. A human? This was hardly a worthy opponent for the Unbreakable. But then, the announcer's voice, now laced with a hint of dramatic flair, began to recite Maya's credentials. He highlighted her role as an engineer, her specialization in planetary resource extraction, her lack of military training. He even mentioned her recreational participation in mixed martial arts, a detail that drew scornful laughter from the alien audience. It was clear the intention was to highlight her perceived weakness, to underscore the sheer disparity between her and Xylos, to make the champion's inevitable victory even more glorious. The camera zoomed in on Maya's face, captured during her capture. Even through the holographic projection, Vashkol could discern a subtle shift in her expression. A flicker of something in her eyes. Not fear, not terror, but something else. A quiet determination, perhaps? A spark of defiance? It was hard to tell, given the limited data. But it was enough to deepen Vashkol's intrigue. This human, so seemingly outmatched, possessed an unusual stillness, an almost unsettling calm. It was a stark contrast to the usual panic or primal rage exhibited by other species facing Xylos. The arena floor, a marvel of adaptive nanosurfaces, began to shift. The gleaming metallic plates melted and reformed, transforming into a rough, uneven terrain, mimicking a rocky, volcanic landscape. Jagged spires of simulated rock erupted from the ground, and shimmering energy fields began to coalesce around the perimeter, creating a barrier designed to contain the combatants and amplify the spectacle. This was Xylos's favored terrain, a brutal, unforgiving environment that played to his immense strength and agility. A single, small door hissed open on the far side of the arena, barely noticeable against the towering backdrop of the shifting landscape. From it emerged Maya Torres. She was small, undeniably so, compared to Xylos's monstrous frame. She wore a simple, dark combat suit, practical and unadorned. Her dark hair was still pulled back, and her face, though now showing a slight flush, remained largely unreadable. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, punctuated by outright jeers and whistles. They were openly mocking her, dismissing her as a sacrifice. Xylos, on the other hand, stood at the center of the arena, his immense form casting a long, ominous shadow over the entering human. He let out another low rumble, this one carrying a distinct note of boredom, a dismissive sound that conveyed his utter lack of concern. He didn't even bother to properly acknowledge her presence. To him, she was just another insignificant morsel, another fleeting moment of violence before he moved on to his next meal, his next conquest. Lord Vashkol took another sip of his algae extract, his gaze fixed on the human. He watched her movements, her posture. There was no hesitation, no outward sign of fear. She walked with a quiet, almost deliberate pace, her eyes scanning the arena, taking everything in. It was a strange sight. Most combatants, even those from warrior cultures, displayed some degree of apprehension when facing the unbreakable. But this human, she seemed almost thoughtful. He felt a rare surge of genuine curiosity. He had a feeling this match, despite the overwhelming odds, might just be worth the price of admission. The stage was set, the champion was ready, and the human, the seemingly defenseless human, stood alone against a coliseum full of bloodthirsty aliens. They had underestimated her, and they were about to learn a very expensive lesson. The grand announcer's voice cut through the simmering tension in the arena, a booming declaration that signaled the start of the spectacle. "Let the trials begin." The words reverberated through the colossal space, and a deafening roar erupted from the crowd. The holographic displays surrounding the perimeter flashed red, indicating the live feed was active. The betting terminals in the nobility pods beeped furiously, closing out final wagers. There was a palpable sense of anticipation, a collective holding of breath, as all eyes turned to the arena floor. Xylos, the unbreakable champion, did not waste a single second. With a guttural roar that seemed to tear through the very fabric of the air, he lunged. His immense frame, seemingly ponderous due to its size, moved with a surprising, terrifying speed. His 6 limbs propelled him across the jagged, rocky terrain, each step shaking the ground. His razor-sharp talons, extended like wicked daggers, aimed directly for Maya Torres, intending to end the fight before it had even truly begun. He was a force of nature, a living, breathing engine of destruction, accustomed to opponents who crumbled before his initial assault. The crowd collectively leaned forward, eager to witness the swift, brutal end. Commander Drexhigh let out a triumphant click of his mandibles. 30 seconds, Lady Quinera, he muttered, a smug grin spreading across his face. "I told you." Lady Kinara's shell was already cycling through shades of triumphant gold, signaling her expectation of an immediate victory. Merchant Zultup was practically vibrating with delight, counting his hypothetical winnings. But then, something unexpected happened. Maya Torres, instead of freezing in terror or attempting a futile block, moved. Not with the frantic, desperate movements of a cornered animal, but with a fluid, almost graceful sidestep. She wasn't fast in the alien sense of the word, but her movements were incredibly precise, economical. She didn't waste an inch of motion. Xylos's massive claw, designed to rip and tear through hardened armor, swished through empty air where she had been a mere fraction of a second before. A ripple of confusion went through the crowd. It was barely perceptible, a collective intake of breath, a slight hesitation in the usual raucous cheering. Xylos himself seemed momentarily taken aback. His crimson eyes, usually so confident, narrowed slightly. He hadn't expected evasion. He expected a direct confrontation, a clumsy attempt to defend. This human was different. Maya didn't pause. As Xylos's momentum carried him slightly past her, she pivoted on the balls of her feet, her body rotating with surprising speed. Her arm, a seemingly slender appendage compared to Xylos's limbs, moved in a blur. She didn't aim for a vital spot, or a limb. Instead, her fist, balled tight, connected with a sharp, cracking sound against the champion's right knee joint, precisely where his heavily armored leg bent. It wasn't a powerful punch by Xylos's standards, certainly not enough to shatter bone or pierce chitin. But it was placed with surgical precision. Xylos staggered. It was a minute movement, barely a tremor, but it was there. His perfectly balanced charge was momentarily disrupted. A low, annoyed growl rumbled in his chest. He spun around, his 6 limbs moving in a synchronized blur, attempting to bring his other claws to bear. He was no longer treating her as a dismissible nuisance. He was treating her as a problem. Lord Vashkol's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. He leaned forward, his half-sipped algae extract momentarily forgotten. "Did you see that?" he murmured, his voice a low, almost incredulous whisper. Commander Drexhaya's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. "A lucky shot," he scoffed, though the usual confidence in his tone was laced with a hint of something else, a nascent surprise. Lady Kinara's shell flickered erratically, her color patterns reflecting a momentary disorientation. Merchant Zultup's tentacles drooped slightly. Maya, however, was already moving. She didn't engage in a direct exchange of blows, something that would have been suicide against Xylos's raw power. Instead, she weaved and ducked, her small frame surprisingly agile on the uneven terrain. She seemed to anticipate Xylos's attacks, sidestepping his sweeping talons by mere inches, slipping under his bone-crushing maw as it snapped shut, barely missing her head. It was a dance of avoidance, a relentless, infuriating evasion that clearly frustrated the massive champion. Xylos's roars grew louder, more enraged. His attacks became more frantic, less precise. He was used to overwhelming his opponents, to simply crushing them with sheer force. This human, however, refused to be crushed. She was like a persistent, irritating fly, constantly darting just out of reach. He brought his massive forelimbs down in a crushing blow that cracked the simulated rock where she had stood moments before. Dust and debris exploded outwards, but Maya was already elsewhere, observing, calculating. Then, she struck again. Another swift, economical movement. As Xylos recovered from his missed attack, his heavily muscled flank was momentarily exposed. Maya, instead of punching, used her elbow, delivering a sharp, jarring strike to a point just behind his rib cage, a place where his armor seemed slightly thinner, less robust. It wasn't about power, it was about disruption. Xylos let out a startled, almost pained grunt. He stumbled, his massive body swaying precariously. The crowd gasped. A collective, stunned silence fell over the Colosseum. Xylos, the Unbreakable, had stumbled. It was an unprecedented event. The champion, known for his unyielding stability, had been knocked off balance by a creature less than a tenth of his size. The grand announcer, momentarily speechless, cleared his throat, the sound amplified to fill the arena. "A surprising turn of events, ladies and gentlemen," he stammered, clearly improvising. The human, Maya Torres, displays unexpected agility. His voice, usually so confident, wavered slightly, reflecting the collective shock of the audience. Lord Vashkole's smirk returned, but this time it was genuine, unforced. Unexpected agility, indeed, he murmured, his gaze fixed intently on Maya. He saw not just agility, but intelligence. She wasn't fighting him directly, she was fighting his weaknesses, his habits. She was observing, learning, adapting, even in the midst of overwhelming danger. Commander Drexhigh was no longer clicking with amusement. His 4 eyes were wide, his mandibles slightly agape. She moved with such fluidity, he stammered, a note of disbelief in his voice. Lady Kinara's shell pulsed with a chaotic array of colors, reflecting her growing astonishment. Merchant Zultup had completely forgotten about his betting pools, his tentacles frozen in midair. Xylos roared, a truly furious sound this time. He was enraged, his pride deeply wounded. He lunged again, but this time, there was a raw, uncontrolled fury in his movements. He was no longer the calculated, efficient killer. He was a beast driven by blind rage, and in the arena, rage often led to mistakes. Maya, sensing the shift, allowed a faint, almost imperceptible smirk to touch her lips. The first exchange was over. She had survived. And more importantly, she had shown the Unbreakable that he was, in fact, vulnerable. The real fight had just begun. The universe was about to witness a human redefine. You stopped this response. Give me 3 to 4 parts. Understood. Here are the next 3 parts of the story, continuing the narrative from where we left off, ensuring each part is engaging, uses simple English, has clear headings, and maintains the specified word count.